Good morning, everyone. It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversation, 2018 Innovation Award winner, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads, fathers, and male caregivers that is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And as always, we've broke 400,000, just waiting to give you the 500,000 mark of dads, fathers, and male caregivers that we have contacted directly and indirectly. As always, like to say you are, blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, solution for someone's problem. Good morning, Ryan Knight.
Good day, Dr. Vibe. Always good to start off the morning with you and those that join us. And for those that might not remember me because they haven't seen me since last year, my name is Ryan. My name is Ryan Knight, one of the co-founders of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. We support entrepreneurs of African and Caribbean heritage, really to figure out what stage the business is in and help them create a strategy to grow their companies exponentially. And I'm an entrepreneur myself. I do run a company called Detailing Nights. So we provide mobile waterless car cleaning. So we go to people's houses or their offices, clean their cars on the spot without using water, and our plant-based eco-friendly cleaning supplies. And waking up to the snowstorm, haven't we had enough? It started from November, man. I know Donovan's in the back room, like, you guys don't know winter. But we got
That's what I meant. I
spoiled,
knew
I
it was
feel like, the
coming. I
last
got up
couple of
this
years.
morning, open up the front window, go, no, some more snow shoveling today. So I'm waiting for it to finish. It's supposed to
Man,
finish
I'm
now
still
in 8 hours
sweating,
today, and
shoveling.
then I'll go shovel. I don't want to go out and out numerous times. I want to get it one shot and done.
And especially like the kids are back to
I
school
just,
today.
oh, I
But
can imagine traffic today
yes,
in the Greater
yes,
Toronto area.
like,
Nut.
and who else is back to work? So government workers have been
5 days.
sent back. And so for anybody that's been maybe running from payments that they have for the government and noticing they're not calling as efficient, be careful because the government's going to get a lot more productive. And that might be an oxymoron, a productive government, but they're back to work 5 days a week. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on being forced back to work? Like, do you feel people that got used to working from home should be able to?
It was inevitable because what happens, especially, it's all part of an ecosystem because a lot of businesses were probably suffering because they weren't getting the foot traffic in the
Yeah.
past.
Like the path that's underground
Yeah, all in
downtown
the Greater
covering.
Toronto area and all that. I always say to people, you have choices. This could have been a time where you could have been looking for other opportunities. But again, a lot of companies are going back to that. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the financial, emotional effect of all of this will be on the populace. Like, I'm blessed. I work from home because I have my own business, and I do my own thing, and I only like, as I tell people, I only go out to these days, buy groceries, get something to eat, see a friend, acquaintance, etc., or go to a restaurant or get money from somebody. That's it.
Yeah, go pick up money.
Even that's done electronically these days
Yes.
because there's a lot of things I just say no to these days, really and truly. But I do selectively make sure I go to face to face either events or things that are a good investment of my time.
Yeah, and even I know the people that are frontline workers, like my wife's a nurse, and so she doesn't understand this. Hey, options to work from home. It's like, listen, we had no option, and even with us with cleaning cars, we haven't figured out how to clean a car virtual or
Exactly.
remote yet.
There are
So
some
there's certain
things.
people that have to be there.
There are
So
some
they're not
things.
feeling
Yeah,
like sorry for anybody.
yeah, there's certainly some things that are front facing, 100%, but not
Yeah.
everything has to be front facing. I don't think so.
True. And even I have a sister that they haven't mandated her back to work because she works in the insurance industry, like claims and stuff. And so a lot of it can be done remote. And
Yeah,
my mother,
it's fun,
yeah, like
right?
they
Because
figured out how to set up at home and have a safe
absolutely.
environment. Yeah.
Yes, for brick and mortar business, probably their two biggest expenses are salaries
Mm.
and the cost of the actual place you're running the business. right? So
Absolutely. And there's a lot of downsizing that's happened since the pandemic. And now that's where a lot of companies are figuring out how to allow their companies to work from home and save on costs. But also, there's a study I think LinkedIn did that showed a lot of people or a lot of employers are finding their productivity going down. So this is where they started to realize, hey, we need our guys back
yeah,
person because productivity was suffering.
yeah, I'll believe it when I say I think it's just an excuse because who's fudging numbers. But I agree. I can see how
I,
could
I wouldn't see an employer pushing back against people working from home if productivity stayed the same. Like that's the only argument I would see. Like having to see people if they're doing better as good work or better work and from home and are happier, I wouldn't see people pushing back and saying like, "Hey, you got to come in even though you're more productive at home."
Well, I know a number of different people who are doing the corporate thing that
Mhm.
they've been called back to the office and the company's underestimated and they've had to hold back people coming out because they don't have enough space for everyone coming back.
Wow.
I know a number of companies that are like that, and some people who are working from home
Mhm.
and their company moved the location so they're farther away for their commute now. I was
Ooh,
talking
right.
to a lady a few weeks ago, and I said, "How you feel?" I just want them to give me a package. I don't want to do that commute. I
Right.
don't want just give me a package."
But did any of those companies share why they wanted people to go back to work? Like, did they say they were seeing
They
an
just I think
increase?
well, I think underlying with some companies, they have a space and it's not being used and they're paying for it,
Yeah, true.
you
I
know?
know a lot of real estate agents in the brokerage. They were talking about the space being underutilized. I saw a lot of brokerages downsize, but then that was the one person I was also talking to that saw productivity go down because when you have that sales environment and
Yeah,
having people kind of
interaction and all that.
right and being able to bounce off each other, and even I was hearing from some developers like they were saying when they
Oh, they need their
code
money too. They gotta keep on building buildings.
no, sorry, software developers I
Yeah.
was talking about, like they working together are actually better to like collaborate and bounce ideas off each other and troubleshoot when it's people are at home. You
Yeah.
can't just tap somebody in the shoulder and ask a question. Now it's like you have to book a meeting in their calendar and it's
Yeah,
like
and all that.
yeah, like
Well,
the
yeah, but
that you lose that without people being
how's this gonna
present.
impact the state of the family?
That
There you
hey,
go.
and that's the big pushback I'm hearing is the childcare because
Oh, yeah.
being able to work from home, you're able to handle the kids' schedules easier, but the commute is back, and now daycare has always been expensive. It hasn't gone away. I don't know. Did we ever figure out the $10 daycare in Canada that was announced? I
No.
haven't really seen that.
All right. Well, we could ramble on a lot. We will probably in a little while, but we have Donovan Ralph Martin with us today talking about the situation, something that happened on Saturday. Just a little thing that happened on Saturday. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back. We'll do some quick housekeeping. We're gonna have Donovan Ralph Martin on, talk about what's going on in Venezuela, United States, and 47. So we'll be right back.
Watch Primetime Saturdays on Saturdays, 5 p.m. Eastern, where Aisha K. Staggers and Laura Lala Key try to make sense of the nonsense in American politics and culture.
Watch Black Canada Talking live on Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern, where Dr. Vibe and Cesar de Mamusa give their takes and POVs on news stories from a Black Canadian perspective.
All right, we are back. You're watching the Morning Vibe on January 5th, the first Monday in 2026. Please subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. We have cleanly passed over 2,000 subscribers. Beautiful thing. And now we're working on our next plateau, 2,030 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, why not? Love you too. And I know there's a lot of people that watch that don't subscribe. Would you like you to push those two things and make it happen? Also follow the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Substack. Also join our Discord group. email me dr.vibe at the drvibe.show.com. There's the link for the Twitter joining up. Advertise your business product or service on any of the platforms that I'm a part of. Email me, please email me. And cannot forget our good friend Dr. Tachi, the power behind Indie Soup TV, which is an independent content creators channel where we have about 20 to 30 independent content creators and 28,000, over 28,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel in 2 years' time. All right, before we bring Donovan up, I just need to do something here. So give me a quick second because I just got to make sure Ryan's part of the picture here. I just see he's not. Well, you're with us now, but I just want to make sure you're part with us with myself and Donovan. So let me just do that right quick. Size you into the world, as we like to say. Okay, we want to do that. All right, so just hold up, everybody. Hold up. Dr. Vibe's doing something in real time here. Good. And then we do this and we do that. And now we will bring up Donovan Ralph Martin. Please unmute yourself, sir, Mr. Ralph Martin. And
good morning, everybody.
How are you?
Yeah,
It's great. Yes, Happy New Year to each and every one of you and your guests.
Why did you bring the snow and cold from Winnipeg to us this morning?
It's beautiful. I think we're at minus 20, 25, no wind.
Wow.
So
Put things in perspective. Yeah.
beautiful day.
Keep it there, please, and thank you. What's been going on in the world with the daily Scrum?
Oh, really busy. We've just finished a few big projects, and just working with the stuff in the U.S. has got us working overtime, and it's a good time. Lots of things we're looking forward to this year. A launch of a big project in the whole dating world that we're going through testing right now, so we're really happy, and we'll
bless you. Good. Have fun with that.
Yeah.
Have fun with that. And Fitness IQ Canada says, "Oh dear," Monin, and says, "Minus what?" That's crazy. That's crazy. But speaking about the U.S., some things happened on Saturday. So President Maduro and his wife taken by the U.S. forces to New York. What is your take on this?
So we've been writing about this for a couple years, actually. And we're monitoring everything that's happening with not just the Trump administration, but believe it or not, it was the Biden administration who actually set up the wording and changed the laws for this to happen, right? So Venezuela was always on the take for their oil. It was no doubt that Venezuela's oil is the largest in the world, actually, next to Canada and Saudi Arabia. And
they're saying 70% of the reserves are in Venezuela. That is
correct.
Massive.
We're talking trillions. And if we are all familiar that the U.S. has a history of toppling governments for their natural resources. We see it in Libya, we see it in Syria, we see it in Iraq, we've seen it in many parts of the African nations, we've seen it in Haiti. But there's one little thing too also, what a lot of people aren't aware of is right now as we speak, there are U.S. tankers essentially siphoning off oil in Syria backed by the U.S. Army. And that's been going on for years illegally because they're like, wow, there's nothing the Syrian army can do to stop us. So there are tankers going in and out every day, just siphoning off the Syrian oil. So to put it into context with what's happening now in Venezuela, This shatters every possible international law you could think of. And
Wow.
nowadays, international law, it means absolutely nothing unless you are a poor nation who actually follows it. But if you are the US, it means absolutely nothing. You come in, you do what you want, and you could get a strongly worded reprimand or a letter, and
It's no
that's,
real consequence.
yeah. So what's happening right now is, you know, Congress is governed by, when it comes to war, when it comes to an outright war or clandestine war, they're governed by what's called Title 10, which is an act of war, and Title 50, which is covert war by the CIA. Both of them require oversight by the US Congress to approve. In this case, Trump unilaterally says, well, we're not requiring Congress to do anything. So he's bypassing all the mechanisms in place for checks and balances. And because he is the commander in chief of the military, they cannot say no to any order. So he's, in essence, he's really one of the first presidents who said, you know what, I could unilaterally act anyhow I want and get away with it because Congress can't do anything, considering Congress is controlled by the by both houses are controlled by the Republicans. So they're going to side with him in any manner they want. And especially that this year is a midterm election where many of them are up for reelection.
So does it help Trump that he picked Venezuela as the first country to use this new like powers that he has, but because people did agree that Maduro should be removed, so him now exercising this type of it's all like a pseudo invasion of a country to say like, hey, I'm doing what everybody wants, but now he can pick any other country and do the same thing that maybe people don't feel as positive about, but he's now exercised like he's kind of raised the bar to where he can invade a country and people can realize, hey, there's really nothing that anybody can do.
Yeah, this is terrible news. This is going to be a temporary win for only Trump and his administration,
Interesting.
just him. Because what happens is when you have a dictator come in and say, "We're going to take all your natural resources because we are the," and I'm quoting, "We are America is the rightful owner of Venezuelan oil.
Okay.
We are going to run Venezuela indefinitely from the United States and install American companies to um, essentially mine the oil." Those are verbatim.
Right.
That's a problem. So one of the things what Trump wants to do is install the leader of the opposition as the new president. Now, she's been given the Nobel Peace Prize, which is terrible. It was essentially bought for. So when that happened earlier last year, the Nobel laureate foundation lost all credibility. She has openly advocated for the U.S. to come in and actually bomb her own country and install her as president.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a terrible situation. So now what happens is, like any government, there's the second in command, the vice president is now in charge of the country.
Mhm.
And Trump and Marco Rubio basically told her, "You're going to run the country based on what we tell you to do." So it's a terrible, terrible precedent it sets, because this is going to be the first real massive snowfall to the American economy. Literally will collapse this year, and for many reasons I'll explain.
That's wild.
All right, I want to be right quick on this. We also got some comments. I always want to go to our family first on this. So let me. Okay, why is this thing not rolling? Okay, there we go. We got things happening. So good morning, Mr. Wayne Harris is in the house. Says good morning, Hall. Has a question. He says, if Israel can do it to Palestine, Russia to Ukraine, why can't the USA do this to Venezuela?
Well, There's that is a good question,
Mm.
right? But we also got to also add a bit of context to it. Is let's first of all let's talk about the one with Russia. Okay, the reason why the first started was Russia annexed Crimea 10 years ago, and when Crimea was annexed, that whole region there by Crimea and lower by the Donbass is 95% of them are Russian speaking and identify more as Russian than Ukraine. Yes, when the breaking up of the Soviet Union, Ukraine was considered the jewel, the prize Russia always wanted back. So
Mm.
there's that is undisputable. But what actually led to the first invasion of Crimea and the last annexation was the United States surrounding Russia with on the eastern flank with NATO. So there was an agreement years ago that Russia will never invade. It will never invade Ukraine if the United States stopped expanding NATO. That they agreed to. But what happened was the US kept bringing more people into NATO and more. So essentially, Russia was completely surrounded. It's completely surrounded by all NATO countries. And that the US broke the agreement. And then the red line was US would never invite Ukraine to be in NATO, right? Every country has their sovereign right to join any organization they want, but that was the red line. And the Biden administration, the Obama administration, strongly pushed for it. Biden so even more. And so that was one of the the red line to annexing Crimea. So it's not right when any country does it because you're infringing on a sovereign nation. Now, when the situation with Israel, it's again, if we're being factual here, that invasion of Israel to Palestine and Gaza, that could not happen if the U.S. never backed it or sanctioned it, or Britain,
Mm.
or France, or Germany, whose ships are there. So if Iran, which is the biggest supplier or proxy fighter, supplying proxy weapons and money to fight a proxy war, which is against Israel. If Iran fought Israel straight up, there would be no Israel. But because Israel has diplomatic and military cover from the US, they can act with impunity. And there's also Israel does have the fact as they are a nuclear state. But lost in all of this shuffle is people never talk about how Israel says they want to eliminate Hamas, but nobody ever talks about in the Western nations, we see Hamas as a terrorist state, right? But we also can't forget that they were the democratically elected government. We also can't forget how Hamas was started, which was a vacuum with the US created when they started the war in Iraq. And for the longest time, one of Hamas's major funder was Israel. So those are all a lot of context that never gets mentioned in the news. And so, long story short, it's never good when anybody invades any nation. But we also have to put into context, it's never right.
Donovan, I know you don't have a lot of time with us today, so want to fit in some other quick comments here. Wayne is continuing saying this has been the American foreign policy for decades. Also says the Warsaw Pact in the late 90s, and also says, or if NATO alliance doesn't provide the weapons and funds.
Yeah. So, Doctor, I could push for another. I just got a text here, so I could push for another 20 minutes. So,
Okay, good. All
yeah.
right, fantastic. No, I didn't want to cut you short
No,
in
I'm
regards to that because I know there's a lot of
So
context. One of the things I find interesting about this whole situation is 47 arrests Maduro and his wife in regards to narcotics.
kidnapped.
Kidnapped, right? But they've arrested two, and supposedly the arraignment's happening today. In fact, this morning. But in the last few weeks, a certain president of the United States let go a certain former president of Honduras who was sentenced to 40 years in regards to drug trafficking. And it always comes back, and I never forget David Frum said about a year ago, when you're looking at 47, he only does things for himself and money. I'm a little bit disappointed in the media, because media should be asking, okay, 47, how come you're arresting this guy for narcotics, but you let go this other gentleman who was legally prosecuted for 40 years for crimes maybe worse than this gentleman has allegedly done?
So it's so funny you say that, Doctor. That is literally our lead story that will be published today on this
Yeah.
whole thing. And one of the interesting thing is, you're 100% right. I always say, follow the money.
Yep.
Because how is this going to benefit Trump? How is this going to benefit the U.S.? Are they planning on reinstalling him as the president or a de facto leader? Right. Secondly, is he was responsible for trafficking over 400,000 tons of cocaine into the United States.
Is
By all,
this the gentleman from Honduras or
yeah, this is the former president of Honduras.
Right. Okay.
So he was responsible for trafficking over 400,000. At least that's what they could account for.
Right.
So the question is, why now? Right? You really have to ask why now.
I have an answer to that.
Sure.
What do you think my answer is?
It's money.
That's one thing, but there's another answer too.
I believe Trump, like a good friend always said to me, is you don't get rich by being in public office. You get rich by the things and moves you make for when you exit public office.
By leveraging it, right?
Okay, but I still have another answer.
Oh, do talk.
Okay, Scott Galloway regards this man who is dead as the second most powerful person in the United States.
We're listening.
Epstein. Another everything to deter people from Epstein. He says Mr. Epstein has so much power, especially over 47, that he does everything he can to divert attention to that. I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Well,
but in the zone.
Yeah. You have to have, listen, you have to have real power, and those narco leaders, and you don't get to be the president without doing something or having real power. So he definitely had something intangible enough to make Trump say, okay, we need to pardon you after you've killed you.
Or he's willing to donate financial to him.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. You know, when you're the president of Honduras, or any, and their rules don't necessarily apply to how North American is. Who knows how many hundreds of billions who he has stashed in private Swiss accounts under aliases. Nobody's going to check those aliases. When you're the president, you could print up your own aliases and passports, or you're dealing with, and it's, nobody will be the wiser. So it would be naive to think there's not billions and billions of dollars.
Of course. Got another question and comment here. Good morning, Ray. Always good to see you. Good morning, General. Asking you, what is your perspective of the impact on the Caribbean, especially Guyana, which has a long-standing border dispute with Venezuela?
Well, there was not too long ago, we wrote about the Trump administration was trying to install surveillance ships and drones in parts of the Caribbean. And people fought against it. and it was said to be temporary. And with Guyana and the whole Venezuela thing is the biggest concern is Guyana had reached out to the Biden administration back then for help, and they were only happy to oblige.
Mm.
So, taken into context, with that being said, this is a win for Guyana because they no longer have to worry about Venezuela in the interim. But this is a huge loss for them because they're now in debt to the U.S.
Right, another question here. Wayne is asking, how much oil does Honduras have?
It's a good. That is a that is a good question. Um, but I would go a bit further than that. I would go, what are the rare earth minerals and natural resources?
Yes, 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 yes. A good question.
Because what happens is when the whole BRICS nation was formed, in China basically controls, I think it's depending if you in its totality, at least 80% of all the refining and manufacturing process of rare earth minerals.
Mm.
They don't have all the minerals, they just control the process. That is why every EV battery goes through China, right? And when China has locked up all the African nation, Middle East nations for refinery. They're working on that with the Latin countries. So it all started when America's like, okay, we're in trouble here. So they successfully were able to get Argentina to back out of the BRICS nations because China would be mining all their natural resources. So America is going to do that. But the problem with that is to get to the level of refinery where you need, it's going to take a minimum of a decade, right? So as America tries to get the natural resources in parts of the Latin country, it looks great on paper, but they're still a decades out. So in reality, it's in a decade. Imagine how far ahead China will already be, which they're already at the top of their peak. So that is what I could think of, not just oil and natural resources in Honduras. And a quick side note is years ago, we're talking when the first war in Afghanistan started. I had an employee, her husband was a JAG officer, and everybody was talking about US was there to mine, get out the Taliban, you know, make retribution for September 11th, and then, of course, mine the oil. But what was happening was America was mining all the lithium fields in Afghanistan. It was massive. They were taking lithium out of there like you would not believe. And then, as another side note, because while I'm here, is the U.S. military was the largest. They had hundreds of people literally sent there just to protect get this, the Taliban's while they mined all the opium. Because while they were mining the heroin, actually, the U.S. understood that the majority of the heroin were shipped to China, was shipped to Russia and parts of Iran, which meant their citizens would be addicted to heroin because they're the biggest users. And that was one of the things people never talk about, how that was used to destabilize those nations. So you have America fighting against the Taliban with coalition forces, but at the same time, you had elite special forces protecting the Taliban as they mined the heroin fields.
Whoa.
All right.
But
So just,
before we jump to,
just if I get permission, just so before you talk, Ryan, just to answer Wayne's question, Honduras has no, just research here. Honduras has no proven oil reserves and does not produce any oil. The country consumes about 58,000 barrels of oil per day, relying entirely on imports for its oil needs. So I just wanted to answer that. Go ahead, Ryan.
yeah, I was curious if you could give a bit of context to Maduro because people are making similarities between what Trump tried to do and what Maduro actually did do. Are you able to give us some light on what Maduro's like infamous for?
Well, so here's the thing is, and again, we're not advocating anything for Maduro, right? But we also have to look at it from an interesting lens. Is a lot of brutal things has happened under his leadership, and a lot of brutal things has happened under every country's leadership, regardless if you call them a democratic or communist or socialist or imperial. So the problem is there's no consistency of how do we determine what is brutal, what is not. I mean, for us, you're killing people or your citizens are starving, your citizens don't have good health care, your citizens are strung out on the streets. I mean,
Doesn't that sound like a little bit like America? No
there,
comment. Go on.
that's the point I'm making. So yes, there's a lot of brutal things that happen, and but one of the problem is the lead when they had the election, which is ironic because you see there was a lot of Western observers who were there who oversaw the election.
Okay.
Now, so so were there corruption? Could be. I'm not ruling anything out. I'm just saying is the leader that they wanted in did not get in,
Hmm.
and which was the opposition leader who was a very pro Israel, pro America, pro whatever we want. It's yours. So because the leader they wanted did not get in, it was well, we no longer recognizing him as the legitimate president, and that's a dangerous precedent because this was the same thing that happened in the first Trump election, right? So again, regardless of what we think of a leader, there was a process that went to electing that leader, and because that person was kidnapped, extraordinary rendition, which is illegal in the states, that's the problem. And if it was truly about drugs, right? They would have went after Colombia and Mexico, the two largest narco states. They would have also said, you know what? Instead of blowing up boats, why don't we capture them like we do every other narco smuggler coming into the U.S., interrogate them, extract information, and go after the main source. And if this is the lastly, if any other nation struck U.S. civilian smuggling, it would be an instant war. So there's no consistency in how international law is applied.
Right.
Gotcha.
Wayne Wayne Harris has to say if Venezuela has most of the oil on the planet and and has the right type of oil that for the refineries in the Gulf Coast, that undermines Alberta and our leverage for upcoming trade negotiations. Interesting point. And then JJ Mars, good to have you as always from Colorado, says Poppy Fields had special security priorities over some of their military objectives.
Yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha.
100% on the poppy field. Wayne, you are correct. The one tidbit I would say to that is the amount of years it will take to get the refinery to the capacity to where it has to be. Alberta will be okay, even though we're still looking at ramping up and building out an east and west pipeline and building up our LNG corridors out in the Atlantic provinces, hopefully one in Quebec and expanding the one currently in BC. So it will it can potentially affect it, but it's still years away. But then also you have to say to yourself too is even though Venezuela is producing all of that oil, you still have to sell it to somebody right now. And a lot of countries are the biggest buyer is essentially China. So are they going to say we're going to roll out the red carpet to get this oil where systematically um, when America intervenes in these nations, it's literally to prevent China from expanding, because China is the biggest importer of the oil in Venezuela, of the oil in Iran. So there's not a big rush. There will not be a big rush for people to buy Venezuelan oil under control of the U.S., because U.S. is going to be hesitant to sell it directly to the biggest supplier.
Another conversation place here, Donovan. Is this inevitably just getting closer and closer to a head-on collision between China and the United States?
In theory, people say this will happen, but it will not happen. And I'll be 100% honest. U.S. has a powerful, and I'm not by any means crapping on the U.S. I think it's a beautiful country, beautiful people. It's just the process of the Trump administration and the propensity and appetite for war. There's over 850 U.S. military bases globally. Okay, if you go to places like Japan, you would think it's the U.S. It's military everywhere. So if you take aside nuclear weapons, every major superpower has nuclear weapons, and I hope to think we've gone this far and no one would ever actually use them. But if you're talking technology wise, I don't think the U.S. would win a fight with China. If we're being, if you're just literally looking straight at just resources, I know you'll get a lot of pushback from people who are very pro-military, but I have no I have no skin in the game. It's just facts. Let's look. China builds, I think, 100 ships a year. The U.S. builds, literally from the U.S. Department, I think it's 1 to 2 ships a year.
Mm.
They have tens of millions of people who are in their military, and hundreds of millions who are reserves. So from a straight manpower, it's not even close. And then you have technology. If you looked at the Chinese parade in the summer of last year, they have this one nuclear warhead that hits all 50 states in one fire, and then has on top of that has the only country with a hydrogen bomb. So if you look at it, a lot of their technology is fully automated. Like we're talking robot soldiers, robot dog, robot. They're the only country they have what's called a drone mothership. So there's you never want to see two superpowers collide. But if we are being honest with ourselves, and we're talking about strictly equipment, and we're talking about strictly manpower. Remember, China has 1.4 billion people. The U.S. is, I think, around 400 million, right? In China, you're mandatory have to serve in the military. So their reserve level is unmatched, right? So if people are really honest with themselves and you take away the rhetoric, right? And then let's be honest, you know, there are no military bases outside of China, right? So America is strategically placed with over 800 military bases, but they're so tangential. They're not a lot of soldiers, so they're spread thin, and so we just have to be honest. And it's hard to have for people to have honest conversations because they're either pro America, pro China, pro Venezuela, anti Venezuela, pro NATO, anti. You bring in all these ideologies and opinions, but nobody ever just says, "Look at the facts." Is for the last I think the last war China was in I think it was either 1979 or 1960 with Vietnam that lasted a few days. So you've had essentially over 50 years of building up a military and never used it. So we just have to put context into a lot of this.
JJ Mars says there's some concern some groups in Central America will eventually smuggle in very effective weapons to use against the U.S. naval blockade, causing an escalation. He also says China has been trying to establish military presence in Africa for a while.
So two things to that is he's right. Eventually, there is going to be a catastrophe on one of these naval blockades. The naval blockades, somebody's going to some Americans are going to get hurt. It's inevitable. You see it in the Red Sea. You see it in the Gulf of Baba Mandel. You see this in the you've seen this in the Middle East. So here's what a lot of the news didn't report is although America was blocking ships, they did not report that they did not block the naval blockade. The ships that were marked with the Russian flag or the Chinese flag going to oil going to leaving and going to those nations. So if this was a true blockade, then they would have blocked those ships. So cause and effect, right? We only hear what the media wants us to tell us in silo. In regards to Africa, um, China could have established any amount of bases they want in Africa at any point, but it's not their mo. And for a person who's been there quite a few times, is you have to strategically look at why China needs Africa. Is number one, again, cannot stress 1.4 billion people. They need resources to sustain. And if you do not have win-win situations where we will build up your infrastructure and we will get paid in resources and we will do that in situations that work for both. So having military bases there, it makes no sense. And they have a policy where it's we are friends of everybody, enemies of none, and that kind of symbolizes the whole Chinese philosophy, right? So to have military bases where no one in Africa is at military odds with them, nor are they with the Middle East, it would not be financially or prudent for them to do that.
Ryan?
Gotcha. Well, Donovan, you mentioned earlier that this would be the start of a downfall for the U.S. I was curious if you can give what does the domino effect look like because of this invasion into Venezuela?
Well, the first clear one is, everybody talks about, oh, sanctions from when Western countries sanctions other countries like Africa and poor, it hurts. It really hurts. But when a country, let's think of the three biggest countries when, or the let's keep it on the two. Let's keep it with China and Russia. Right? When they sanction the U.S., it actually really hurts because a lot of people don't know is that we'll start with Russia. Even though you see all these sanctions against U.S., Russian sanctions actually hurt U.S. even more because the majority of a huge majority of the uranium and nuclear material used in the bombs and nuclear warheads you see actually come from Russia. So so if Russia stops sending that, that's a massive hit to the U.S. And the second one is China. So when the trade war happened, China says, okay, this is what we're going to do. When you imposed 100% tariffs on our EVs or electric vehicles, and then Canada followed, which is probably the most dumbest thing you could ever think of, which we've talked about. The problem with that was at essentially the bequest of Elon Musk. So America was importing less than 1% of Chinese EVs. Let that sink in. Less than 1%. So when that came into play, it was great for Tesla because if you've seen a Chinese EV, I've seen them. I've driven one.
Yeah, they're elite.
They are superior. They would
Yeah,
crush the American market. So
right.
that's why they were out. But how that plays into sanctions is when that happened, what China did was through their BRICS nations says, okay, we are no longer buying whatever little of American meat we bought. We're no longer buying any soybeans from America. We're no longer buying any corn from America. And essentially collapsed all of the US soybean and the US corn for farmers and a lot of other sectors. So they essentially last year completely wiped out the US farmers. So right now, if you're a farmer in the US, you're completely wiped out. So when it comes to soybean and corn, because they could purchase all of that through Brazil, and canola, which was through Canada, which was Canada is now going to be restarting that agreement. So and those markets are never coming back because they don't need them, and so
Right.
punishment. So this is the sanctions that are going to be coming down from China is going to be massive. But in what they are yet, I don't know, because China is strategic when they implies they think 10 years ahead. And with the BRICS nations is when you sanction a country that has a bigger GDP with the combine of all the BRICS nations, their GDP is bigger than all of the G20 nations and account for, I believe, over 80% of the global oil and account for the majority of the straits. That's a problem for the US.
Right. Right. That's wild.
Let me ask you. Um, you know the name Stephen Miller.
Vaguely, I may I should, but it's right now. It's
Well, yeah, Stephen Miller, who is the deputy chief of staff for 47. His
oh,
wife was it, I believe, yes, on Saturday, his wife, Katie Miller, put out the contentionally altered image of a Danish autonomous territory of Greenland on her X feed late Saturday, hours after the military operation in Venezuela. And the caption she put on it was soon. Do you feel this is just the start of more aggressive imperialism throughout the Western world? Because 47 said the Donroe Doctrine, paraphrasing the Monroe Doctrine. So is this something we should be looking at in the future, that maybe 47 saying he made Greenland, he wants to look at Greenland, maybe even this country.
well, we wrote about the Monroe Doctrine a few times, and for many people who don't know about that, it was like what president put into play. Essentially, the gist of it is saying, America should control what happens in Latin America, in the gist of it, and anything but that, I think it was Eisenhower, is a problem. So that's the gist of the Monroe Doctrine is America rules the Latin countries. They have superior authority of what goes through. Now, the problem with Greenland. So here's a huge problem if America tried to do that. Is Greenland is not a signatory to NATO, but Denmark is.
Mhm.
Now, if an attack on Greenland is considered an attack on Denmark. An attack on Denmark is considered attack on all NATO nations, which under NATO, Article 5 will automatically be enforced. So you have the European Union, as much as they play ball with Trump and as much as they try to be cordial, cannot stand them. French President Emmanuel Macron cannot stand them. This is what I believe. I, as much as they are saber rattling, I wholeheartedly believe that NATO would enforce Article 5 if this happened.
Gotcha.
Because, yeah, because Trump has already signaled his disdain for NATO. And I do believe will be the first time where NATO will flex its muscles if this trying to happen. There will be a 100%. I would say there would be uh, full military strikes on NATO, on the U.S. if they try to do that. Because here's a lot of the things that people forget is to go to attack NATO, the U.S. would have to move um, ships and so forth into place, right?
Mhm.
Various waters. The biggest base there they would deploy from Germany, but Germany would have a huge say in this because Germany houses the largest military base there. Then you have the base in Diego Garcia, which houses the B-1 and B-2 bombers whenever they're not being housed in in Fargo or North Dakota, which will easily be intercepted. So there's a lot of, it will not be an easy invasion as the US believe it. Sure, they could probably go in and do what they did, but there will be hell to pay because the US is not going to be able to station warships surround there and NATO not do anything. It will be a complete, and they know it. It will be a completely different scenario.
Okay, but we're dealing with 47,
Yeah.
right?
No, no, no. I agree. He's very he's aggressive, but I
Mm.
also believe though this is the first time you will see strong military pushback because the European Union has been clear that they will never allow the U.S. to take Greenland. So this would be I believe this would be a real showdown, and you also have to remember,
Mm.
it's for the resources U.S. has in the Europe, they're still coming to Europe, where you have NATO's full-fledged forces in Europe.
Right. And just before you have to bounce, I was curious. It's nice to talk about Greenland, but how are your thoughts on Canada's reaction to this invasion of Venezuela? Because I'm hearing Pierre Polyev hyping it up, very excited and touting Trump. I'm seeing Anita Anand, who's our defense minister, Ministry of the Defense, talking about, oh, we need to obey international laws. Yet you're just mentioning that it seems like we've broken a lot of those laws. So I haven't heard Carney's response. So I'm curious, how is Canada reacting to this news?
It's well, Polyev is going to say whatever he wants. It's unfortunately it's a terrible statement because you're only gaslighting. I don't even think he lasts as the leadership convention.
Well, that's a whole other
Oh
conversation
wow.
right now,
Okay.
too, right?
So,
So
but
as the leader of the Conservative Party.
yeah, I don't think he
Oh
lasts.
wow. Okay.
Um, but the problem is you have a lot of saber rattling happening right now. And can it happen to Canada? In theory, yes. In practicality, no. Because here's the biggest thing is again, all of our politicians they do lip service. They do a lot of lip service. They do a lot of talking and so forth. And the problem with that is call a spade a spade. European countries hate the United States, or at least hate this version of the U.S. under Trump. Um, and so, let's say Trump tried to do that to Canada. Again, we cannot stress that Article 5 would have to be invoked. You also have NORAD, which is also command out of Colorado, but it's a huge contingent of Canadian arsenal there. You have Canada part of the Five Eyes, which is do not want America in the Five Eyes anymore, right? Which is a big intelligence agency. And then you had Canada earlier in the year signed a massive intelligence
Yes.
deal and a commitment with Europe. So I would not be surprised if you saw in the news in the next little bit that Canada and EU nations, or Canada and a certain European country, have stepped up military, joint military options. I would also not be surprised if you saw European ships and European jets started training, doing military training exercises in Canadian waters.
Whoa.
That's interesting to keep track
Well,
of.
Mr. Donovan, I know we have kept you longer than you expected to be here, and I know you've got to jump.
Yeah.
But I want to say thank you as always for spending some time with us. If you want to get in touch with Donovan, he is the dailyscrumnews.com and also email address info@thedailyscrumnews. Donovan, we'll offline keep us up to date, but I also think that it'll be important that we may need to bring you back sooner than your monthly visits.
Yes, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Ryan, Dr. Vibe, your guest. It's a wonderful show. On another note, there is an interesting gentleman. I think you're gonna want to interview.
Okay, well, we can discuss that offline, my man.
Offline.
Nice.
I think you'll find him quite interesting.
All right. Well, look, as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll catch you soon. And congratulations on the event you're going to be doing today, and hope it goes fine.
Cheers. Happy New Year, everyone. Bye-bye.
Be well.
Later.
All right. Mr. Ryan, you've got to jump, I know. And what we're going to do is but any last things was we're going to end it when you get off today. So anything that you want to tell about what's going on?
No, just well wishes to everybody with 2026. Any projects or plans that people have, hopefully they get some momentum as the year ended. I know it's sometimes hard to get the engines going when we're off for a while, or the holidays kind of sporadically keep you from staying in flow. I know I'm trying to get back into the groove, so good luck to everybody with their projects in 2026.
Excellent.
Yes.
We're just going to end it today because we're just going to keep it nice and tight. So just as we finish off, subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. So subscribe and notification button. You want to get to 22,040 subscribers sooner rather than later. Also follow Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Also join our Discord group. Email me is the best way if you want to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms I'm a part of. Please feel free to email me, dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. If you want to get in touch with Mr. Knight, it's Ryan Oneil Knight. That's Knight with a K-N, not an N.com. And also, you can find out more about me at taplink.cc/The Dr. Vibe Show. And also, you can watch replays of this epic conversation on the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, ACBN, Afro-Caribbean Business Network on YouTube, and Ryan Oneil Knight on YouTube. So as we ended out today, as always, it's a new year, but the same thing. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller, get stronger. Block assumptions. Aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And if you're not making money, make history. Try to do both. And coming up this Friday is the first appearance of Carol Nicole, a holistic nutritionist of the new year. And for people who go, oh, that's different, she is now coming on the second Friday of each month, not the second Monday of each month. So as always, God bless, peace to all, keep the faith, walk good, and we'll see you on Friday.
Peace.
This whole thing of using your business with plant-based products, don't you think your life should reflect that too?
Juke him, Carolyn, juke him. The family loves us here because they're saying Fitness IQ Can says put a wig on to get in.
Oh
God.
my God!
Like the ideas are just coming fast and furious here this morning. What? Okay, look at this. Global Women Ambassador. Good morning. Look forward. Okay.